The house I grew up in terrified me as a child, and it still terrifies me as an adult.
Hello and welcome to another video. Today is about a place that's really close to me and close to where I'm filming this, and that is Abbots Drive in Stanford Hope in Thurrock, Essex. A little bit about making this one, because obviously I know a lot of people that have lived there, people that still live there, but this comes from, first of all, it was actually in a book, so you can look up one of the stories about this, and it is covered in quite a few local history books or local paranormal books around Thurrock and Essex. But this come directly from the person that lived in one of the houses. Now there's a few of these houses along that stretch of road. Is it to do with the old farm that used to be on there? A lot of people think it was a monastery, but it wasn't, it was a farm. But yeah, it's quite interesting, and it affected a certain gentleman very badly for the rest of his life, and he still feels those effects today. So on the first one, what we're looking at is a house that is set on Abbots Drive. I'm not going to give the details of the house or whereabouts it is on Abbots Drive, because some of it may work out later on in the video, but I'm not going to identify that, because obviously the people who live there now don't know nothing about this, and I don't want to cause any upset to anyone locally to me neither. So this starts in the early 90s, and this is a family that lived peacefully in the house for a couple of years, and then once the child was about 7, the house started to have a loft extension being done, and that seems to be the trigger of a lot of these events that happened. And first of all, it was just things like lights going on and off, doors banging. There used to be something you used to call the rush, or the rushing, and that was all of a sudden all the doors in the house would slam shut, but as if someone was running through the doors. They could hear footsteps, and then someone would run through the doors and the doors would slam behind them, and this would happen right away through the house and up the stairs. At the same time, other smaller things would go on, like wine glasses would fly across the kitchen, the Christmas tree lights would go on and off, and while this was happening, the dog would also be hiding under the table. Now what I find quite interesting is the dad never see anything of this. Now the mum did, but the mum didn't really want to talk about it, and the relationship started to struggle quite a bit over this. And the gentleman that contacted me, I had very long phone calls with him regarding how this affected his life. There was an event that happened to him when he was about 7 years old. And this is when he was laying in bed at night. What he described was a small man being in his bedroom. And he said that this gentleman waved at him. And instead of being full of fear, he waved back and felt really sort of joyful. Almost like out of this world euphoric feeling. He described the man having no face, but a sort of like a green middle. Now, when you look back at it, I think, to me, the visions of like Leprechaun jumps out in my head when he's talking about the green middle and small man. But this had a profound effect on this gentleman. I've got an audio clip where he did it for me, because he wanted to make people aware how deeply this affected him for the rest of his life.
The house I grew up in terrified me as a child, and it still terrifies me as an adult. It weren't a joke then, and it ain't a joke now. Some things you can explain, some things you can't, and this house you can't explain.
The events that he see, with things like Lego flying across the room without being touched, the door slamming, there was a lady he see in a bedroom. He felt every time he was in the bathroom, someone was staring at him and watching him. It had a profound effect on him, a really profound effect on him. And, he did go and seek help. There was an atmosphere in that house that became very, very unpleasant. So when he was describing this gentleman to me, as he said, he was all in black, no face, green sort of belly area, But he said that the gentleman didn't communicate with him verbally. It was via his mind. He was like talking into his head, telling him that everything was going to be okay. Now, even though he felt, I guess, scared but joyful at the same time, the effects sort of built up over a length of time. And the next day, he woke up, all his toys in the bedroom were pointing in the wrong direction. And his mum come in, and what they found was that in the wardrobe there was urine in the corner of the wardrobe. Now, you could jump to the conclusion that he had a night terror and he got up and wet himself into the corner, but this was something he did not ever do. Now, could he have done that in his sleep, where this night terror or dream or something real had happened that caused that as a trigger event that was at the normal and he acted at the normal? But you could say, could it have been that little creature or man that had done that in the corner? But the emphasis is on the dark nature that fell over the house once this gentleman appeared. The relationship in the house became very, very stressed, very, very broken. Eventually it did lead to a divorce. Now, it's something that the family, or the son and the mother, talk about, and the sister have spoken about. The dad still says nothing ever happened, but there was another event where they felt like something had running through the back door. The back door shut, and again they could hear this rushing or the running, and it sounded like a small creature running through the house, but again the doors all slammed behind it. Now, there was a big open field behind them where, yes, something could come over the fence or come in, but it does fall into a lot of stories along that stretch of road and further down that sort of matches up to these reports. Now, when this gentleman told me his story, it matched up to a situation that I already knew about, and that was regarding a house dead opposite this other house. And in that house, there's always been said to be a negative atmosphere. Relationships never last. People were always getting into not violent but aggressive relationships. Just unhappy marriages. And listening to what I know now from what he said, it does seem to be that particular block. From what I understand, Abbots Drive follows the road of the farm boundary, and on that bend used to be some barns, and that's where these houses are positioned today. Now, we can go back further down. There is a part of Abbots Drive that has a documented paranormal case where the Church of England were involved, and the church came in and performed an exorcism. Now, this is further down the road. You're more than willing to look this up yourself, but again, the story was that a child in the house was possessed, and the council ended up moving the family out of the house because of the possession. Now, this was in the early 80s, and this other story we're talking about is in the 90s. But it seems strange that Abbots Drive has this, I won't say negative. I know many happy people that live in this road, and it seems that something must trigger, or these people's personalities clash with whatever could be around in that house or those houses. I'm aware of 4 to 5 houses along that road that have suffered a story like this. The other one I know of was actually in the late 70s. Now, this was a house just before you got to the shops in Abbots Drive, and the people that lived there were seeing dark shapes in their living room, and they used to move from the living room into the kitchen and out into the back garden. Now, this would not, it still would have been on the grounds of Abbots Hall Farm, because the farm covered the whole top area. Abbots Hall Road, or Abbots Drive, is up on a hill area where the school is set. And I know when I was at school, there was all these rumours that the school was haunted by monks and all that. Now, don't get me wrong, monks did go into the farm because it was used to pay money to Waltham Abbey, so the monks would visit that there. People get confused because we've got Monkshaven, Abbots Hall, the Priory, Cloisters, all those names around here are named after a monastery that did not exist. There was a smaller one down in the avenues, but the farm was a farm. Yes, it did get visited by the monks, but this other house further down the road in the late 70s, was being visited by these dark figures. Now, the gentleman there did describe them as monk-like, sort of like hooded dark figures, but he wouldn't say they were definitely monks. But the only problem that he was having was that his daughter seemed to be obsessed with these figures. She'd be up in a bedroom at night time talking to these people, and then they believed the daughter got possessed by one of these figures. So in September 1977, things reached a new level. The daughter was acting very, very strange, become very, very ill, very, very weak, was talking about these figures. They'd taken her to the hospital, they could find nothing wrong with her, and being church-going people, the priest came round and examined the house. He said it had evil in the house and he blessed it. Things did not improve, and eventually an exorcism was performed in that house by the Church of England. This is only a few years before a second exorcism in Abbots Drive happened in a different house, the one that you can look up. I don't know, and this isn't far. In one of my previous videos, I spoke about another exorcism in Stanford. That place isn't far from Abbots Drive. Now, did we have people living around here at that time that were really into that sort of stuff? Was it because the Exorcist films were out? All I know is that exorcisms are not given out willy-nilly by the church. A lot of stuff has to go in to get one done. So they must have been convinced that something was going on. Adding this to this first gentleman's experience of the small, dark figure, falls sort of in that realm of the dark shapes or monks that were further down the road. Now, I can't find no nasty stories about the farm. I know of nasty events that happened in the houses along Abbots Drive, not deaths or anything like that, but mainly broken relationships, violence, that sort of stuff. It does tend to be set around these few houses. I know I'm going to be asked to identify these houses, and I'm not going to identify them. If you lived in this area long enough, you'll know some of these stories anyway. That's in Stanford. If you've lived here, you're going to know these. There is one you can go and look up. And if you want, I'm sure that this gentleman may even want to talk to you himself about it if you have any questions. This affected him all his life. It's something he has not been able to forget. It was like post-traumatic stress. He suffered from this. As a young child, to see something like that and for it to stay with you shows that it must have been terrifying for him at that time. Now, I don't know if this one is connected to the rest of the stories, but just further up the road from where all this happened, back in the middle of the 1980s, a young lad was convinced that he could see a young boy walking across the field late at the evening, and he would go to his bottom of his fence and have a conversation with this boy that no one else could see, and he'd just come back and tell his mum and dad that this boy lived on a farm. No, Abbots Farm is where the houses are being built on, and the boy used to live there, and he gave his name as Samuel. I've not been able to find any names of Samuel in that area linked to that, but he tells us that Samuel became very, very ill and died at the farm. Now, the boy was very, very sad, very, very distraught, and he sort of understood that Samuel wasn't real. He wasn't a solid person. He understood that Samuel had died, but again, he was still happy and used to go down in the garden of a night time waiting for Samuel to come up and talk to him. His parents were getting a little bit paranoid about it. They took him to the doctors, like you probably would do if your child was telling you that he's having conversations with somebody at the bottom of the garden you couldn't see. And the doctors couldn't give any explanation for it. And within 6-7 months, the boy stopped doing this. But later on, as a teenager, I knew this person. And he told me the story recently again. He does remember this. And he's still convinced to this day that he used to be able to go down to the bottom of the garden and talk to this boy, Samuel. But he also reminded me that when we was growing up, there was other stories about Abbots Drive. And it triggered a memory in me. And it was from, it must have been late 70s, 79. The firemen were on strike. And the house just on my corner here was on fire. And we had the green goddesses come down. And around that time, I remember hearing a story that the house on Abbots Drive nearest to me-ish were being moved out because of a smell and seeing things in the house. And the council moved them out of the house based on it being something wrong. Now, digging back into this years later, I found out what it was that the house would really smell sort of like a not just a burnt tobacco smell, but a off stinky vile tobacco smell, and at the same time a manure smell would come up from their garden. Now that could be quite natural. Again, this is all farmland here. It could be where a manure dump was or whatever, and if they've done stuff in their garden, the smell could come up. The smell would soak into the house and they couldn't ever get rid of it. And again, these dark shadows would walk through the house. And one evening the lady was sitting there watching telly and a shadow come across the living room and just exploded right in front of her face, right up close. Frightened life out of her, and that was enough. She took her children, and her husband was at work, come home, they weren't there, apart from a note. He thought it was a Dear John letter. It wasn't. They'd actually gone and stayed at their friend's house just over the other side of the road. They didn't want to be in the house any longer, and they were moved out of the house later on. This is only a few doors down from where the one that's documented happened. So you've got just all these little events that have gone along this small road. It's not a small road, it's actually a very long road to be truthful, Abbots Drive. And as I'm saying, I've just remembered something, that when I was at school, I went to school at Abbots, and I remember going there one day and the police had closed the top of the road off. And someone had ended family members' lives at the end of the road. Now this is as you come out of Abbots Drive, along that area. I don't feel Abbots Drive as a negative area. It's a weird one because the more I dig into it, the more stories I'm finding. Now, if you do know of anything like this, please contact me. Please let me know your experiences there. And I know a lot of people that have lived in Abbots Drive. And I know some that it's happened to and that have moved out. And I really appreciate this gentleman for contacting me. Speaking to him really showed how somebody can really be affected long term by something like that. As a young child, to be really traumatised. Now, I've put this across in not an easy way, but I can't put over his story and do it justice the way he did it to me. When he was telling me this story, or his events, you could just tell it was coming from the heart, that this really terrified him as a child. It stayed with him. Even to like the rushing or the running through the house, they could never explain it. He was watching the deterioration of his family functions breaking up. the relationships in the family breaking up. And that tends to happen in the house opposite as well. Relationships don't seem to be that happy in that house over the road. And I know this is quite an unusual video, and I've been meaning to make this for a couple of weeks. I got all the evidence together about a week ago, all the stories ready, and I've and hard about making it because I was worried I couldn't do this gentleman's justice of how it affected him and what he see. But because it was so local to me, I didn't want to get kickback on it. Being I've been their local councillor up until like May, when they didn't vote for me. I did get the road resurfaced for them. That was a good win. But yeah, it's a local. It's very, very local, and it still could be going on. And I think that's what gets me. I don't know how things are happening there today. I don't want to go up and knock on these houses and say, excuse me, do you know about this? I don't want it affecting house prices, or may put house prices up. But I don't want them to have that effect. And if nothing is going on, I don't want them to start panicking and start seeing things, because I've put that image there in their head. So it's been a tricky one. I have sat back and thought about it. It's Halloween coming up, so yeah, if you live in Abbots Drive, happy Halloween. It could be an interesting week for you. But yeah, I'd say I hope I've done this gentleman's events or experience justice, and trying to emphasise how much it affected him. Now, what a small man, all in black, green middle, no face, was talking to him, not verbally but via mentally. It's just very, very strange, and to give this joyous feeling over it, there's nothing I can really find that matches that or anything like that. A part of me was a bit relieved to talk about the farmyard boy. They're the more sort of stories that you know of, the ghost of a farmyard boy or whatever like that. This just had a darker undertone for me, and having ties to the monks, well, Waltham Abbey, not monastery on Abbots Hall, Abbots Hall Farm, but is there something there? Do we need to dig back more into the history of Abbots Hall Farm? Maybe before the farm. Now, this area is ancient land. We all know that the Romans were just up the road in Fobbing. I don't know. It's got Saxon burials just down the other side, mucking. It's a strange one. I don't think I've come across such a compact set of stories that sort of line up with each other. I'll probably get chased down the road by one in Abbots Drive after this, so hey ho. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for the support, and give it a subscribe and a like if you haven't, and share it. Please share the video. People say to me, can I share it? Yeah, please do share it. It really helps if you can share the video. They don't get seen enough. I've apparently used some terms in my videos about end of life stuff that I've worded wrong. Yeah, so that doesn't get the audience they used to get. So that's my mistake. Still learning how to do the videos properly. YouTube changed the dynamics all the time. So yeah, more people that see it, more people I'm going to make videos for. So yeah, more people that see the videos, more feedback I get, and can make the videos better. So anyway, happy Halloween, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.